I think it was one of the best presidents in my lifetime.
Joe Biden was the best president in your lifetime.
The Democratic Party should move further left to energize young voters. Can the agreeers step forward?
Oh, yeah. We all agree with that.
I look at the New York mayoral election as an example. I think Mamdani is a great candidate, and the establishment Democratic Party runs people like Cuomo, who has sexual harassment allegations, and it's a moderate. And the fact that he won pretty well is a sign that the Democratic Party should move towards the left.
So if Mamdani, for instance, say he was a citizen and he was running for president of the United States, would you guys vote for him?
If he was the nominee, I would vote for him. I'm not sure I would vote for him in the primary.
Why?
Because I looked at, this is probably where we disagree, because I looked for electorability.
I would absolutely vote for him. I would vote for him because he's a star. And I think what we need in our Democratic Party is a star. And I think that he's galvanizing a lot of young voters. And I think that for us as older people, it can be a little challenging, but we need to be challenged.
It's your generation that got him elected. It was definitely young people who were not used to voting who wanted him in, and that's what got him elected. And I think for anyone who has a problem with his lack of experience, he's hiring people that have a lot of experience. And I think that's in his favor.
Yeah, I think Zoran is Obama-esque. He can, like you said, galvanize the younger generation, which is something we definitely need to work on.
My feeling is if moving further left means health care for people, fixing the immigration problem instead of locking people up, and affordability and those types of things, if that is what moving further left means, I'm all for it.
I really do understand your point on electorability, but I feel like that doesn't necessarily work. I feel like a lot of times when you think in a more moderate lens as to kind of like quote unquote steal voters, I think that can almost like bite you in the butt just a little bit, because you almost then ostracize like your main core people. And like we saw in New York, it was a lot of galvanization of like the younger people. And even then, he actually did very well with a lot of older generations in New York. So I feel like it's one of those points where you can't operate from a mentality of how can we best play defense, but just how can we best get our point across. And I feel like that is the direction we should be going in, personally.
Normally, I don't try to be motivated by fear, and I'm willing to take risks. But because of MAGA and Trumpism, and the threat is the worst I've ever seen in my lifetime. It's really worse than anything I've experienced, that we have to be really careful, and this is not the time to take risks.
Okay, this is how I feel. Gavin Newsom is ready to fight. And I want to get behind somebody who's ready to fight. And that's who I want to get behind.
To tie in all of these points, we need somebody who can communicate. That has been the problem, that you will have issues that people are talking about and you don't have candidates or people in power who are actually able to communicate that to everyone. So if that means going further left to make that happen or staying centrist to make that happen, it doesn't matter as long as somebody can communicate. Gavin Newsom is a good communicator.
Check.
Mamdani is a great communicator.
Check.
So we need people like that, because the old guard has not been communicating well.
Like Schumer.
They just have
Schumer's
not.
been terrible.
Been terrible.
Can I ask one question real quick? And I'm sorry for talking a lot, but I guess for me, it's kind of a conversation between communication and conviction. Just which one do you guys feel like is more important? Like, this is a question I genuinely have, because I feel like while the optics and the marketing around politics is more important than it's ever been, at the same time, I also want to make sure we don't go for figureheads and kind of just talking heads, you know? Making sure we have someone who actually has the conviction to actually make those ideals happen, if you guys want to speak on that.
Yeah, I think conviction is probably the biggest for me. I would argue, and I think a lot of people, I actually work in politics, I work for a Republican, not my views, but obviously. But I think they would argue that J.D. Vance is a great communicator, right? But I don't think he has the conviction to do that. So do we need someone on the Democratic side that is a great communicator but doesn't have any conviction? Which I could see both parts. Yeah, Gavin
Well, I
Newsom,
think
I would
J.D.
argue.
Vance is good at talking.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yes.
about
Right.
communicating.
Right.
Right.
I
There's a
agree.
big difference. Yeah.
Just because words come out of your mouth doesn't mean you're communicating. He's a puppet, like so many of them. And I think what all of us probably would agree on is that people like Donald Trump and the people that follow him have done more damage to this country in a very short time than in anybody's history. And that's got to end.
I mean, I feel like what I've kind of been hearing from like your guys' side is a lot of fear. I think a lot of the motivation is fear, and I don't think that's any way to exist, you know? I think, yes, I do agree that Trump is a threat, but it's starting to sound like we're like the react to Trump party instead of our own party. And I believe that we, as the Democratic Party, need to start acting with whatever we want to do and our own policies, and instead of being like, oh my God, we need to react to Trump, we need to counter this. No, we need to do what we want and start leading that way, just like how they lead. And I feel like that is the way to move forward, because fear mongering, people are just tired of that.
So respectfully, I'm not sure that that's what we're saying.
Yeah, I'm not either.
We're not saying anything
We're not
really
talking about
about
fear.
the fear of it.
Well,
what we are,
I,
what we,
I am saying.
okay.
You're saying that there's an existential threat right now.
No,
but
what
I'm
I'm
not
saying-
disagreeing with you. I think Democrats need to focus on the things that Democrats are known for, which is being about the people, caring for the people, and Democrats need to unhook themselves from corporations and from some other groups that I will.
Yeah, but again, what I'm
nameless
going to
right
keep
now.
hammering on, though, is you can have the conviction about it. You can believe that this is what you're going to do or want to do. But if you can't communicate that to the people, then you have lost them.
I think Joe Biden's a great example of that. I
Yes.
mean, not a great communicator, but I would say he had, at least in some points, he had a backbone.
And he got things done.
No. Joe Biden did not have a backbone. I mean, just in general, I think he was terrible for the Democratic Party, and I think he's a perfect example of a centrist. I personally did not find him to be left-leaning at all.
I agree.
Well, he got a lot,
wasn't
but he got a
left-
lot done.
But he got a lot
I
done.
think he was one
done.
of the best presidents in my lifetime.
I mean,
Wow, that's-
Joe
stats
Biden
say
was
that.
the
Yes,
best president in
yes.
your lifetime.
This is the
Statistically,
difference.
he was.
This is the difference of us being
He was
in
a
our
grandpa, though.
60s, and you're in the 20s, because we have
Can we ask
40
one-
years
So
of
Joe-
experience, and this is also to the earlier points. We've lived through Reagan, both Bushes, and Trump is far worse than those people. That's why we have more fear. And we've seen Clinton and Obama, and Joe Biden in his term got more done than those past presidents.
So-
it was very impressive because we can see through the long term.
So can you like speak specifically on what you feel he did?
Well, he passed the stimulus bill. He did a lot to fight global warming in terms of the presidential, not bills passed, but
The PACT Act, I
Yeah.
mean,
So we're just gonna like
defended the ACA.
So we're just gonna completely ignore what he did abroad and in Palestine.
Yeah, no, we're not
we
saying
can- we
his
can get
foreign
into that.
policy was bad.
No, but I do think that foreign policy and policy in general is Joe Biden's impact on the world. I don't think that we should just be looking at it through an U.S. American lens. I think we need to look at what Joe Biden did to the
Yeah.
world.
I agree. I want to add something. So I want to add a perspective that is typically commonly ignored. So I'm Native Hawaiian. My kingdom has been under the illegal occupation of the United States government since 1893, when the overthrow of our queen, Queen Liliuokalani, who was a woman. It was a woman that was overthrown in.
Kalani.
Yes, Queen. I love her so much. But what's really interesting is that ever since the provisional government basically allowed for the territory of Hawaii to exist and then into the state of Hawaii, ever since it has been Democrats predominantly that have been leaders in the fake state of Hawaii. And I definitely do believe that especially young Native Hawaiian people, we really need a push towards the left, especially because it is our human rights that are being violated consistently by the United States and its military.
Yeah, but if you're talking about American imperialism, like how far back do you want to go? What do you want to do? Are you really talking about a revolution? Because
Yeah.
most people have no idea the amount of territories that I'm not saying most people, I'm not saying y'all. No, the amount of territories that the United States has possession of, has colonized, and the whole thing.
First thing that needs to happen is we need to shift our mindset, and we need access to education. That's the first revolution that needs to happen, is in our minds.
No, and I agree. I feel like everything comes back to education, like she was saying. And even on your point of like what revolution could look like today, that's a question like I feel like I ask myself a lot, and I feel like it fully starts from that educational lens. I think when you look at kind of the American project and how, I guess for lack of a better word, cumbersome it is, like it's not to a point to where we could just have a French Revolution and just get it like that. Like America's like 30 Frances, right? Just in terms
No, but
of
as important as education is, the problem today is, the internet is the good news and the bad news. Because it used to be, if for an education, you went to school and you listened to teachers and you read books. And today, people go to the internet, and it's like, depending what site you're on,
That's
you
fair.
you
But at the
can
same
go
time, I feel
far
like
left, far right.
I think it's
the school
garbage.
system has kind of failed us.
Yeah,
and
I would say
Absolutely.
the United States education system is U.S. propaganda.
No, it's mind-blowing when you finally realize it, because you don't realize it when you're a kid. But if you want to talk about the American experiment, you have to start from the African continent, the Canadian border, the Native Americans, who else? The Hawaiian island. I mean, you're just...
And we should be doing that.
Yes.
Yeah, we should.
when you look at the
and that's
first
the operative
thing that-
word, is should.
So I think that what the Democratic Party needs to do to push itself left is to start by going all the way back and recognize the United States legacy of imperialism.
Violence,
And violence, exactly, and the harm that capitalism has caused.
Yes.
And instead of being like, oh, well, we can't go that far back. No, we need to start recognizing what the United States has done globally. And that is what I would love to see the Democratic Party doing.
So once they do that, what happens then?
I think that there's so many different systems that have been laid out by so many different indigenous groups of people. Like there's so many alternatives to Western way of politic, of economy, of even thinking for millennia. Like we need to be going back to really analyze the things that our ancestors or the ways that our ancestors have lived. Like it's so valuable.
The creation of the United States is new. It's very, very
Incredibly
new.
Yeah.
And so I think that what the United States has done, and specifically the West, what the West has done is try to instill in us this idea of this is the only way of living. This is how we have lived for so long, when in reality that is not the case. Nation states are new. The United States of America is new, and by recognizing all of that is how we can truly move forward.
And it starts with education.
I guess we're speaking on backgrounds. My people are Kenyan, like I'm a first generation American. And I feel like when I think about kind of the American mentality, it's a very individualized system, whether we're thinking about capitalism in general, but specifically in the West. And even in the Democratic Party, it's very much, what can I do for you? What can you do for me? Like it's very transactional in that sense. And I want to see more communal thought, you know, understanding what can you do for your environment as a whole, seeing that our community in and of itself is a living organism, and understanding how we can build and like bring that together. That's personally what I think.
To me, right now, the reason politics doesn't work for us as individuals has a whole lot to do with capitalism and the connection between political parties and corporations. And I'm just using simple man's logic because it's a lot. It's a lot to peel apart. But at the end of the day, a politician, to me, in my opinion, has to be a politician. And there's all this dealing that has to happen that ends up leaving those people down at the bottom to fend for themselves.
But I think specifically on that point of the Democratic Party and the direction it needs to go, I feel like the New York case is so particularly interesting because Mamdani didn't even receive many endorsements until it was very obvious that he would win.
Right.
And I feel like it's one of those things where, and I hate to bring up the idea of fear, and I'm not saying this is all what you guys have been communicating, maybe a little more you, but in general, speaking on that fear-mongering point, I think it's one of those things where the idea of the status quo has always been my biggest gripe with the Democratic Party.
Yes.
I think there's always a big push for respectability politics and understanding how can we best slowly make things happen as to maintain a level of normalcy. And I feel like Mamdani, as an example, and just other people of that mindset or mentality might be in a more, I don't know, inspired or passionate type of push, and I appreciate that. Personally, I was a Bernie guy in 2016. I mean, I was 12, but like, you know, personally, I really appreciated like the level of passion he brought to politics. And I think when you look at the way like he was ignored or kind of brushed apart by the party, I think a push left would kind of create more of that environment, personally.
What this nation needs is like what happened in South Africa and Eastern Europe, where they had reconciliation hearings. That's what this nation needs to deal with our past history of slavery and colonialism. That would go a long way in educating people. But on the other point, when we are born into this country, there are already these institutions already in place that have been around for a very long time. And it's very hard to change those institutions. And when you talk revolution, that's most likely going to fail because the overwhelming majority of American people aren't going to get behind a revolution. So I'm much more for working within those institutions to nudge those institutions.
I have to agree with Pete here. I mean, I can't see, you know, obviously half our nation are Republicans who voted for Trump. So is it going to be us versus them? I mean, it's already us versus them, but do we need to get like are you, by revolution, are you meaning
Class
like,
consciousness.
okay, so you don't mean like pick up arms?
Can I say that?
No, she doesn't mean pick up
respond to
arms. She doesn't, obviously, we don't mean pick up
Right.
arms. What we're talking about is just restructuring things from the top down
Yeah.
and the bottom up. And it's almost
What's
as
that?
if people already see it.
So specifically what I'm saying is once we do develop a class consciousness, there will become resistance from the elites, right? The elites don't want the structure that oppresses many people to go away. And that may result with violent revolution.
Wokeness has gone too far and alienates moderate voters.
I'll support.
The nuanced group we got.
I think we
could stay here.
I think we don't need moderate voters if we can galvanize the youth or our liberal voters. So Pete, I'm gonna ask you like kind of like what the opinion is for you, like being older, when you see things like, you know, what was it, the Trump ad that was like Kamala Harris is for they, them, I'm for you. I think that really resonated with a lot of moderate voters and a lot of people, even though that's not necessarily true. But I don't remember in the Kamala's campaign hitting back from that. They kind of just took that. And it really resonated with moderate voters and really galvanized Trump supporters to come out.
Well, if wokeness is marginalized people no longer putting up with racial epithets or discrimination, I'm all for that. But wokeness has been weaponized. Like I saw a video of a white guy wearing dreadlocks getting harassed. And things like that really can be used by people on the right to demonize the left as a cudgel against them. So I'm not sure what the solution is, but it definitely has been weaponized and been used against Democrats and the left.
I feel like this is an interesting conversation because I don't agree with the idea of wokeness having gone too far.
Right.
But I do agree with the idea of it now being at a point to where it's a more alienating concept. I think I would like to start with like what the actual definition of, I guess, woke or wokeness is. Like it goes back to the early 1900s from like black revolutionaries and even black artists. The original idea until like 2016, the idea of wokeness was just surrounded around this idea of consciousness within marginalized people and just like being aware of the systems in place and
Which we
the
should
actual
all
stuff.
be.
Exactly.
So,
but I feel like it's gotten to a point today, and not on the wokeness topic, but more so on the alienation side, to where the stakes are very dire. It's very in your face, to where I think it goes to what you were saying, to where I personally don't believe there's room for moderation. I think in a perfect government system or in a perfect American society, there would be that room to kind of leave it up to, well, I can go with this issue or I can go with this. But I think things becoming as polarizing as they are, and with the stakes, like people are getting picked up off the street. Like that's not a thing that's just like, it's like genuinely happening. Like there are college students getting kidnapped and sent to El Salvador. So I think it's one of those things where the point and the stakes are getting so high to where there's no room for that. So people who are moderate are going to feel alienated both by the right and by the left. So then it just becomes a question of strategy and how do you kind of appeal to those people without, I guess, selling out the movement. And I'm curious about you.
I mean, I just think the whole woke thing just completely grinds my gears. Because, I mean, you referenced the idea that woke is something that got co-opted from the black, really church. Woke came out of church, stay woke, let him sleep. Meaning you're not aware of what's going on among our people. And to let, white liberals and white conservatives, because the liberals did it too, Y'all are too woke because, you want rights for trans people. Y'all are too woke because you want him, her. And at the end of the day, we forgot that, again, there are people down at the bottom rung who don't have health care, who cannot eat, who cannot find a place to sleep, who cannot find decent housing. And to let the conservative, what do you call those people, moderates and conservatives, run away with this idea, I'm shutting it down every time. You don't even know what the woke is. It really just incenses me that we got hung up about this culture stuff. Again, he, her, them, all that. There's 1% of 1% of the population that is trans. And yes, they should have health care. They should have decent places to sleep. They should be able to eat just like all the rest of us.
You're right. And to me, the term moderate is such a useless term.
It is.
You're either for something or you're against it. What's a moderate? What does that mean? It means you don't have an opinion.
Yeah, and you don't have to be for the fact that I want to be called they. You don't have to be. Why are we getting hung up on that?
Right. It doesn't affect me. Right.
Yeah, it's because it's become a poison pill. That term is a poison pill. And since it is now, and we continue harping on it, it is something that if we're going to use the word moderate, whatever that means, it's hard for anybody to find themselves in the position that you're saying, where everybody who's down, who's at the bottom, wondering when they're going to get their health care, when they're going to, and now we're still talking about this.
It becomes a semantics issue.
Yes,
They use
yes, the thing that is so
woke.
in the way.
Take it back. I'm woke as
Take it
hell,
back.
and I'm
And they
gonna
did that on
continue
purpose.
to
Yeah,
get more and
on
more
purpose.
woke. Every
Absolutely.
time I find
Arguing
some
over language,
injustice.
not arguing over issues.
Exactly.
Well, wokeness has been used by cynical politicians to hide their agenda. You have rich conservatives who want to lower taxes, have a smaller government, but they know their policies aren't popular. So they create these social justice issues to manipulate people who wouldn't normally vote for their policies, to get them to vote for them, to say, you need me to protect you from those people.
The boogeyman.
I feel like it becomes very interesting, especially when you look at kind of, I guess, the culture created by MAGA and like that whole thing. The people he disenfranchises the most are his bigger voter base. It's poor, white, relatively undereducated like people. And it's one of those things to where if you can get people so mad at this boogeyman, because most of these towns are predominantly white, heterosexual, like they
People
don't
of
have
color,
black people
That's
there.
the boogeyman.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just the concept. And most of them haven't even really, there's so many people who haven't even met black people who are scared of us. And it's so crazy.
In
but
this
it's like,
country,
In
yes.
this country. And it's so ridiculous because that's their biggest voter base. And when you look at the way in which he's kind of created this idea and like this fear and this culture of hate, it's so enticing to them because my life is horrible because I'm white. And all of this tax money is going to black people on welfare or going to schools in Chicago or whatever that looks like to them. And they don't even realize that their schools are just as underfunded. Like, is it Louisiana or Kentucky that's like at the bottom of education? But then both are
more or
like
less,
80% for Trump. And it's just like the craziest thing to see because these people don't care about you and they're not helping you in any type of way, but they've genuinely created this culture in where you feel so seen and heard because he appeals to their emotional side. And it's a complete attack on a culture or an idea of people that is false. And it's so
that's the cult.
fascinating.
That's the cult.
Because it's a simple
Exactly.
idea. I have to find somebody to blame.
Right.
Can the disagree step forward?
I personally think we all need to be more awake. I think the more awake that we can be, the better. The more woke we can be, the better. Do I think it has been co-opted? Yes. I think certain people want to paint a culture that being woke is bad to get us to stop and to push against people becoming more educated and learning more and waking up to the system and the forces that have us here. I think being woke is great. I think everyone needs to wake up.
Sure, but does that alienate the moderate voter?
I personally don't care about the moderate voter. I personally, like James Baldwin said, the moderates, Republicans, moderate, Democrats, Tweedledee, Tweedledum.
Let me ask you this. Half the country leans to the right. In your vision for America, what should happen to those people?
I believe that as a society, we need to get educated, okay? And I believe that those people are entitled to an education and they need to learn.
Should they be sent to re-education camps?
No. What? No. Who said that? Should anyone be sent to re-education camps?
That's what happened in the left-wing revolutions in China.
Okay, so what I believe needs to occur is, first of all, our textbooks need to be accurate.
Yes.
The textbooks need to describe the violence that was inflicted upon Black people, upon Native Americans, upon anyone who was not white. We need to go deep into that and become awakened to really what has happened to people of color. After we realize that, okay, then I believe people will be a lot more empathetic and a lot more compassionate, and we can then move forward on how we can make things right, and how capitalism has inflicted a lot of that violence, and how we as America can actually give back to the world, because we have taken so much from other people that do not live here through imperialism.
You're saying the United States needs to be more woke. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
It should come from the top down.
You're from the South.
Absolutely.
A lot of people are taught of the War of Northern Aggression instead of the Civil War.
Exactly.
That's something that
There's always a way to spin it.
Supporting Israel is incompatible with progressive values.
So do you guys think that the Democratic Party should support Israel?
I think it's a question of what exactly does support mean and what does that look like.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's a really
exactly. I think this is a very tricky one because
it's a nuanced question.
I know my personal beliefs in regards to that entire situation. I have family that was born into a colonial situation. I'm very anti-colonization, which is why in regards to the prompt, I think supporting Israel is anti-progressive values, because you can't be a progressive and be for one of the youngest colonial projects in world history. Like, that in and of itself does not make sense. But I also do agree with
nature
the
is
fact that-
incompatible.
Exactly. By nature it's incompatible, but also my own personal beliefs. When you look at a lot of, like, Israel was almost in Ethiopia. You know what I mean? Like, when you look at a lot of the history of that situation, it's a very funny spot. And not funny in like in a good way, you know?
but I think what people miss today is Israel is not Benjamin Netanyahu. People get confused with Benjamin Netanyahu and his small far-right party and the rest of the people who are living in Israel.
The thing is, people conflate war crimes with existence. I think while the existence of Israel is something that, from a past standpoint, I would disagree with, the fact is that it does exist today. What we can do, however, is prevent the war crimes that are continuing to persist in Gaza and against the Palestinian people. I do think that the two-nation solution is probably two-state solution is the most feasible and practical thing to do, because Israel exists, and unfortunately, there's not even enough Palestinians to occupy Palestine as it previously was, which is a result of a genocide. So it's a very sad spot to see that we kind of have to exist with the fact that that's something happening and that has happened, but...
Well, and it happened 75 years ago, and people need to be aware of
Exactly.
history.
Like, people think it just
that when it
started October
happened,
2
it's
years
like
ago.
all the nations around there, they didn't accept the Palestinians. They didn't want anything to do with them.
No, they did. Jordan accepted the Palestinians.
Most of them
so
didn't.
I'm just going to put my cards on the table here. I think Israel should not exist. I think it is going against United Nations policies, and I think Israel is a terrorist state. And Israel is a settler colonialist project that has basically done what the United States did to the Native Americans and exactly what happened in South Africa. Israel's existence is illegal. It's white supremacy, and that's personally what I believe. What should happen to the people that currently live in Israel? I think that they should be living in a democracy called Palestine.
So would you be for?
Well, they're living in a democracy called Israel.
So Israel's
Whether
not
you
a democracy.
accept it or not.
Israel's not a democracy. Israel is a theocracy. It has a mandated religion, and people that do not believe in that religion are oppressed, brutalized, and killed.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What would the reinstation of Palestine look like? Because now all of the previously Israeli people, or the Israeli people, would then be Palestinian. What exactly would that look like from a practical lens? Like, what's like your 5
It can, you know what, honestly, it can be named whatever it wants to be named,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever the country desires to be named, what needs to occur, just like any other nation state, people should be able to move freely. Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, should be able to leave their houses and go to Jerusalem if they desire to. They should be able to move around the entirety of this nation, just like any other nation, if they please. And that is currently not the case. Israel is not by any means a democracy, and the West just shouldn't be supporting it, because what it's doing to Palestinians, what it's doing to people in general, is disgusting.
Well, when you say it's not a democracy, that's no different than the United States. We're also run by a bunch of criminals. We're not a democracy anymore either.
No,
we can't do what we want.
So what I'm saying, though, is in Israel's constitution, essentially the equivalent of the constitution, it talks about Jewish supremacy. And it talks about the eradication of Palestinian people. And so if that is the core tenet of its existence, what I'm saying is that it cannot be a democracy. Because in the United States, yes, we have our issues, but people are not being mass killed, mass bombed, sniped when they're just trying to go to class, when they're trying to go to their homes. My family was killed by Israel. My cousins, they're now orphaned. Their mother, a staircase fell on her. It fell on her because Israel decided to bomb them and kill them. And they basically lived out of a tent. They lost everything to them. And it's all because of the United States.
So it's a very personal issue for you.
No, it's not a personal issue. I believe this even before my family was killed. I would believe this even if I didn't have any personal ties to it. And I know many people that have zero personal ties to it, but they have a heart and they are human. And if you want to go back and look at how Israel started and how the British had colonized Palestine first, and all of this messed up stuff, and then Israel then went and it took over the prisons that the British had to maintain their settler colonialism. And things got even worse and worse until the siege happened in Gaza, and now we are where we are today.
But I think you're missing how it originally started, which is immigrants from Western Europe after the Holocaust needed someplace to go, and they wound up in Israel.
It started before that. It started way before the Holocaust with Theodore Herzl. He was the one who started writing about it, and originally they had plans to go to Argentina. And then later, it was decided, okay, well, the British have already colonized the state of Palestine. And so because of negotiations with the British, that then went and occurred, and it allowed the West to have a Western imperialist country in the middle of the Middle East, where they could then control certain trades, agreements, whatever.
But no one in the West called it that. They called it a democracy. And for the longest time, before the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu, people thought of it as a democracy. And there are a lot of presidents who've tried to get a two-state solution, which is what they need.
And the West also thought slavery was okay. And that continued to occur. So just because the West thinks it doesn't mean it's true. It's not even close to true.
First off, sorry for your loss. But Israel is not an example of colonialism. Colonialism is when an outside power comes in to another territory to exploit the natural resources of that area.
That's exactly what happened in Palestine.
To send back to the homeland at the expense of the indigenous people. Israel is an example of indigenous people returning to their homeland. There's been Jews living in that area for thousands of years.
And they lived alongside the Palestinians with no issue.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. But the Zionist movement was opposed by the British colonialists. It was an indigenous movement as a result of the discrimination Jews faced during the Holocaust.
Britain went and they decided to create what is today Palestine. They drew it out in, I believe it was 1914. After that, the British were in control of Palestine, correct? Which was settler colonialism. Yes? Which was colonialism at the time.
The British settler colonialism and the other powers, when they carved up Saudi Arabia and Jordan and all those countries and installed monarchies.
Okay,
that was
colonial. Thank you. Okay, so then after that, what began happening was people began migrating into what is now called today Israel, right? And
yes, but that was opposed by the British authorities.
In the beginning, perhaps. Then after that, okay, at one point it became opposed because the Palestinians began revolting.
So you're saying supporting Israel is compatible with progressive values. So can you share why?
Yes. Now, I'm not supporting the Benjamin Netanyahu government. He's a horrible person. But the concept of Israel itself, it's a beacon. It's one of the few democracies in that region, and compared to the other countries in that region. I've studied Jewish history, the Holocaust. Jews have put up so much oppression throughout their history. There's been Jews living in that part of the country, in that part of the world for thousands of years. 2,000 years ago, there was a Jewish nation there. They were all kicked out. When I see Jewish people returning to their indigenous territory, I don't see it as colonialism. I think that you can make a good case for the concept of Israel after the Holocaust. I think the idea of a Jewish homeland is a good thing, and it's compatible with the progressive values to support a Jewish homeland.
Hey, man, this is a really, really fraught subject, and it's very, very convoluted, and depending on how much you know, it's very hard to form an opinion. So I'm just gonna go with the progressive side of things, which I understand. If you have progressive values, you are for fairness. You are for figuring out solutions outside of the box that benefit people. And so in the current situation, what I feel like the United States is doing is supporting Israeli leadership right now. Obviously, Israel is our ally and has been our ally for a long time. So my disagreeing with the statement is that support for Israel has to come within progressive values, or else the situation is going to continue as it is right now.
Sorry, I'm confused.
Yeah, me too.
How is supporting Israel
a progressive thing? We support Israel
but is
right
Israel
now.
Not currently?
Israel's our ally, and currently the United States supports Israel. So in order to change the situation into a progressive solution, we have to do something that also supports Israel and
not the proponent of a current genocide against Palestine?
Yeah, I agree.
So why would we support Israel? Why are we giving money so they can continue to bomb and kill
That's
kids?
just like if your kid's a crackhead. You supported them before they were one because they were your kid. You support them now while they're a crackhead, and you're trying to figure out a progressive solution so that they're not a crackhead anymore.
The solution to helping your kid who's a crackhead is to give them more and more and more and more drugs so they can keep getting high. That's exactly what we're doing with Israel.
That would be
we're giving them more and more and more weapons.
The point is that obviously you have to draw a line in the sand and say, this is what we're going to do now to solve this problem. And that's what the country has not done. The support for Israel needs to change. Clearly, it's not going to be withdrawn. It's not going to be withdrawn. That's a fairy tale. It needs to change. The support, it is a fairy tale. It has not happened.
We withdrew from supporting certain countries and we stopped giving them aid and human rights. So how is it that hard to believe that we can stop giving Israel military
Because Israel's different, isn't it?
It's not different.
It's like Russia. I mean, come on, we supported them. I think it was World War I, right? We worked with them to World War II.
Decades ago.
And now we don't
fish.
support them,
It's
right?
not a different fish.
So my only real response to this is I'm sitting here absorbing.
I'm glad.
You know, because there's a lot that I don't know, and I'd rather sit and listen to all of the different sides of it. Everything you're saying is true. Everything I'm hearing is true. What do we do about it? I don't know. I don't really have a solution for that. This has been a problem. This is a biblical problem, if you believe in that. I don't want to interject something that I don't have as much information on. So listening in all of these things is what's most important. I've got to listen to be able to form an opinion when other people have more information than I do.
Identity politics divides the Democratic Party more than it unites it.
I would say identity politics plays a huge role when we talk about DEI, right? For example, let's talk about Obama. He became president, and then I'd have conversations with Democrats about their racism, frankly. And I would hear, well, we can't be racist. We voted for Obama as president. And that to me is a problem. Just because, you have someone of that identity representing a certain cause does not mean that they don't have racist undertones and that the entire party was kind of built on racism.
Yeah, who was the senator? Robert Byrd, right? Senator Byrd was apparently Joe Biden's mentor. And he was one of the most racist members. I think he was a KKK member. And then he voted for Obama. That doesn't make him any less racist because he voted for Obama.
So would you guys say you're pro or against identity politics? And then I'll kind of give my spiel.
Yeah, I think it can be used to a benefit for certain people, but it shouldn't be your whole campaign. Like, I think Hillary Clinton's a good example of that, is how she ran on that she was a woman. And that I will say she was way more experienced than Donald Trump, but a lot of her campaign that year was breaking that highest class ceiling, right? So that shouldn't be your whole focus on your campaign, your identity, but I think in certain aspects, like I think Kamala Harris did a good job of that.
I feel like for me, I feel like it's more divisive than it is unifying, is simply for the fact in which I think oftentimes it's very inauthentic, in the fact that people will often ignore very valid critiques that someone might have on the party because of, again, their background, kind of like what you were saying about we're not racist because we have a black president.
Yeah.
I would just say that identity politics is not something owned by the Democrats or the Republicans. Identity politics is everywhere.
Right.
And again, people have prejudices. And they, hear a certain word, and like you said, they might say, no, I'm fine, because look, I voted for a black man, but they might still have that prejudice.
Yeah.
And just to tell you, I'm someone who, I have a family, I'm proud to say I have 2 kids who are married, 2 Jewish kids who are married to Muslims. And one of the things that we've learned is the things that we share. And we try and, we're very proud of that, and they've raised wonderful families, and that's out there. You just have to choose it.
And I'm curious, how do you feel like that's kind of shaped your lens on this topic in particular, whether it's identity politics, but also just politics in general? Do you feel like having a blended family made you more progressive, or were you already progressive and
No, I was already there, because I basically said to my kids, you can be whatever you want to be. I don't care if you're a bricklayer or a president or, a candy vendor, whatever makes you happy.
So I just want to say one thing. Malcolm X said, the Democrats and Republicans are like wolves versus the foxes, okay? So when you're talking to a Republican, they will openly be like, sometimes they'll be like, yeah, I'm racist. Sometimes they will openly say that, right? But I think the problem here that I have is sometimes with Democrats, they want to use identity politics. They want to use DEI to be like, okay, well, we can't be racist. We want to be the good guys, the foxes, but sneakily in there, they are still supporting the economics, certain police brutality, stuff like that, that keeps this racist hierarchy of white supremacy in place. And so that is why I said that on the point of the Democrats instead of addressing the Republicans. They accept it.
To be fair, their Republican Party in Congress is mostly white men.
White men,
so,
older white men.
Older white men, so they don't really have a problem with identity politics because they're one race.
Right, it's not an issue for them.
Can the disagreeer step forward?
I think the whole concept of identity politics is bullshit. It's the same thing as using woke as some kind of cudgel to make you feel funny because you have an affiliation by race, by gender, by, what's the other stuff we got, y'all? Religion. It's all bullshit. The Republican Party has built this MAGA base on identity, on white, male, fraught identity. Everything's wrong for white males. And so my thing is Democrats need to adhere to the identity that we know them to be for in this current iteration. The identity of helping the middle class to get back to be a middle class, helping to have a safety net for the downtrodden.
I think what's happening is, it's not that the problem is that we have these different identities and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's that I can't get anything done if you believe something and I don't believe in that, so I don't want to support you.
Exactly.
As a politician or as in the Democratic Party. So it is absolutely dividing us.
Can I ask you a question? Mm-hmm. I feel like, because I believe it was you who said it, when you're like, MAGA, you think of the right, like their identity is very much like this white male-centric,
They're playing it like
right?
a fiddle.
Exactly, but I think because they have this very
it's not just
solid
white though,
identity.
and I hate to interrupt you. Even though it is all white for the most part, no matter what it is, they stay together.
Right, that's what I was gonna ask you. Do you
They
almost feel like
move
there's
together.
too many
So we
identities
are
in that?
divided. We're like, yeah, I don't believe in this, so I can't support you. And it's like, wait a minute, we're not going to take power back if we don't say, okay, I don't believe in that, but I've got to support you. Right. I've got to support you, or it's going to be them.
He's right. He's right, because identity politics has been used to do what? A purity test.
Yes.
Someone may agree with a candidate like 90% of the issues, but because of this 10%, that's really important to me. I'm just going to throw out the other 90%, and that's dividing the Democratic Party.
So then how do you think we can kind of fix that division? Do you think there's going to be like a unicorn candidate who will come out and appeal to everyone, or
No.
what does that look like?
I think that's the thing that will, I mean, look at Obama. I would argue that Democrats were most united under Obama in Congress. We need a candidate that can unite the Democratic Party. We are so divided now, and especially, let's take the government shutdown, for example. 8 senators bent their knee to Donald Trump, right, over the weekend.
But it was
that
only
just
8.
shows us.
It was only 8.
And those
so
8
we
need to
have
be primaried.
They do. I agree with you.
Right.
But we need to
So-
look at the fact that
But
the
those
rest, was
8
it 24 or 32, were united.
Right.
Sure, but that's still 8 Democrats that weren't. That could be 8, and 8 is a large number when you have a minority.
I do think that a lot of Democrats do weaponize identity politics, but it is not my personal belief that identity politics are necessarily bad.
Right, and and that's why that wasn't the prompt. That is bad.
Yeah. That's
divisive?
That's why it was hard.
Familiar with like W.B. Du Bois, like his theory of double consciousness. I feel like it all kind of ties into that idea, right? Basically, from that theory, he speaks on the idea of the existence of a black man in America, or just a black person in America, is to see yourself A, as the Negro, but then B, to see yourself as an American, right? And I feel like specifically on this topic, it's very pointed because you almost have to sacrifice a level of identity within yourself for the game of the political benefit of the party to a certain extent. And that's why I feel like it's divisive in that sense, because if I vote on things purely from the perspective of how does this make me feel as a black man, how is this impacting my community, how do I see myself because of it, it will almost be against my own larger interest, even if it might be against some of my own personal or like racialized beliefs, which is a very interesting line to balance. Personally, I'm very for identity politics. I think, like you were saying, that level of acknowledgement is the most important thing we have. How can you feel represented if you are not seen as an individual? But I do then think from a party standpoint, when we purely think about the strategy or the game of politics, whether or not you want to say it's good or bad, the reason why the party isn't doing as well as it can is because we are having a lot of internal conflicts. I don't think anyone argues with a Democrat more than a Democrat, which is a good thing. I think fundamentally will be a very good thing for progress itself, but based on the prompt and based off the game of politics, I do think it's a bit counterintuitive. Exactly.
Freedom of speech should include uncomfortable or offensive opinions.
Absolutely. Everybody's going to agree with that one too.
I think, unfortunately, it is obviously protected by the First Amendment, but that doesn't mean that we should tolerate it. We should call out offensive speech where it's at. So if someone is saying slurs, we shouldn't just let them say it because it's the First Amendment, right? We need to be able to hold those people accountable where they are, and I think it happens a lot when people are on, social media and they say something, then sometimes, I don't know, I've heard that there has been instances where they've been fired from their jobs, which is, in my opinion, okay. Yeah, if you're gonna come out and you're gonna say nasty things, it shouldn't be tolerated. There should be repercussions for that.
I definitely think this is like a very nuanced prompt, but I'm kind of approaching it from the place that on college campus, when I would speak at Palestinian protests, there would be certain things that if you say them, you could be expelled from school or you could this. So I do think it's important that there is freedom of speech is allowed, because then you get the government trying to censor specific things you are saying. You know, you might not be able to talk about something that the government is supporting, and that is very, very scary. I mean, I think even now, Trump is trying to control what certain students can say or not say about Palestine. And if you say something, like he wants you to be reported for that. And it's very scary for a lot of students on campuses who are just trying to fight for human rights. You know what I mean?
It's unconscionable that on our college campuses where places like Berkeley folding to Trump. And obviously, we understand that people get funding from the government, but there never should have been a situation where the government funds you and then tells you what you can say and what you can't say.
That's against the First Amendment. We're supposed to have freedom of speech.
It's kind of the biggest as if ever that we're at this place right now. I mean, one-on-one, I'm not going to let you call me something to my face that is an absolute slur. I'm not. I'm probably going to react in a way that will make you consider that twice.
Which you have the First Amendment right to do.
Yes, but when we're talking on these larger scales where people cannot come and talk, say what you think so I can tell you what I think and why what I think is superior to what you think.
Should we have the ability to have free speech regardless? And I absolutely think we should, because there's always going to be somebody who's going to want to take it from you, you know? And depending on what that thing you're speaking about is, someone can have their own agenda as to why they want to take it from you. I may not like what you say, and if I have the ability to make sure you can't say it, then the next thing is you can do it to me, and I can do it to you, and I can do it to you. And when we start doing that, we don't have free speech anymore. Now, there are consequences to your actions.
Absolutely.
I agree with what you guys are saying from like a morality standpoint, thinking about the legality of morality versus free speech. Like, you should be able to say something, but there should be those moral and or even like social consequences.
Should be, yes.
Should be. I think for me, the question lies in specifically the topic you brought up about like, you agreed that people should be able to lose their jobs if they were to say things.
Well, I didn't say that exactly.
Okay,
I said
not.
I've heard of instances.
Heard of it. So I guess for me, the question is, especially when you're thinking of consequences in a social capacity, how exactly do you feel like those should extend to a professional or kind of larger one? I'm not saying anyone should get arrested for what they're saying, but you know, let's say someone's talking extremely crazy online, saying slurs or things like that. Do you think they should be fired? And where does kind of that line get drawn between workplace actions, social actions, and kind of the mix in between those things?
I think that's kind of where you get, there's like government regulation and then there's kind of that social concept. And so I do think that's kind of like where we get that overlap of cancel culture. Because nowadays we are seeing cancel culture where, okay, if someone says a slur or they say something, they get fired from their job, they get this and that. And I personally support that. I agree with that. I think if you are spewing white supremacist hate, then you should not have a job. Like, that's as if almost if someone's in the KKK, you know what I mean? They should not have a job.
My counter to that, and I'm not saying whether I disagree or agree, but could someone who's on the opposite end then make that same argument because they have a different belief?
Yes.
So do you think that if you are a white supremacist, you should not be able to say anything in public?
I think, no, I don't think that.
Yeah,
so what I'm saying is I do believe that if you're going to go around and you're going to be spewing like hate and white supremacy, there should come consequences to that. And
But you do have the right to say it.
Sure, yeah.
Yes.
So if you want to say it, yes, there just will be consequences. So for example, I think if I was going to work, I wouldn't want to work with someone who's a white supremacist. That would be compromising me as well. And so I think that's where the problem is.
But again, part of what happens then is you could leave the job. That happened to me once. I found myself in a situation where there were anti-Semitic comments and I left. Right. Rather than, I couldn't get the company to change, but I left the company. So in other words, we have that right to
like
also.
a situation where, let's say you're speaking on like something you believe, if you're speaking on universal health care or even let's say like Palestine and like that whole issue, right? If you're speaking on that at work, but your boss has some disagreement with it, I'm asking the question if what you're proposing in where a white supremacist says something, they lose their job.
Yeah.
Could then like not create a culture or a situation that would also give those same protections? So I'm like, how do you mitigate content? How do you regulate that?
In the end, there have been a lot of opportunities I've had to forego because I do speak out on Palestine. Like that's something 100% I've had to deal with. And so I think if you are being a hateful person, that's completely different than being an advocate for human rights.
I agree.
Yeah, I think the best part of what we're doing here is because we all care about America. We want to see a better America. We want to see one that has accountability in the Middle East. We want to see one that, helps our people.
I always think about the heyday of the civil rights movement and of all the things that Black Americans were at the forefront of fighting for and gaining. And the fact that as Americans, if we were to all get behind that, instead of being divided and recognize that what was fought for is in danger right now.
My biggest desire is for people to really think outside the box and try to defy what is possible. I think a lot of times we think, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that, we need to work inside the establishment, we need to do this. But I think a lot of real change comes from thinking outside of that and really trying to push those boundaries and questioning everything that we've been told we need to do and really looking for answers maybe elsewhere if our current system hasn't been working for us.
Yeah, it was a
Thank
good
you.
stuff.
Very good
Definitely.
conversation.
You do well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Bring good points. Yeah, good points.
I love your perspective.
I love your socks.
Thank you.
They're great. I was staring at them the whole time.
Thank you.